For years, going up through horticulture studies, it was all about cutting back and cleaning up in the fall, with the idea of removing any chance for overwintering pests and diseases. It makes sense logically, but now we know so much more about why that's not a good idea. These days, we know that all of that material that's building up from the fall drop and throughout the year is a vital habitat for all the wildlife that we're trying to protect. It's their food sources, it's their nesting sites, it's their habitats, it's their safe place to overwinter and survive as long as that material is there. And in our efforts to cut back and clean up, a lot of times we get to the fall and we see our spent perennials. They look very dead at this point, and it's understandable that we want to cut those out and get them out of our view. But I want you to reconsider that and leave them in place. And the reason for that, there are two, one for you and one for the birds. The birds depend on these seed heads, and these are so important for them because that's a vital food source for them to get them all through those cold months. Lots of nutrition in there for the birds if you leave those seed heads up. For you, you can leave them up, and it's a stark contrast to that winter landscape behind you, and it looks really nice through that time. So leave them up for you too. Now, something else about a lot of perennials, they have hollow stems, and those hollow stems are used by solitary bees. They nest in that, and they can't do that unless they have access to it. So if you have those perennials with hollow stems, cut them back by about half, maybe 18 inches from above the ground, leave them planted in place, and then they'll have access to get into the top. This bamboo right here is an example of a hollow stem. It's there for support, but I leave that up too. So I'm really backing off on the cleanup so those solitary bees have a place to live. Now let's talk about the lower layer, the duff layer. That's where all the debris accumulates over the year. That's the mulch and all the leaves and everything that piles up right there. That is such an active place for a lot of organisms and creatures that make up the soil food web, as well as caterpillars from butterflies that overwinter here. Many of them spend their cold months hunkered down in that duff layer and then become the butterflies that we want in the springtime. But during that time that they're overwintered there, that's a great food source for birds as well. But without that duff layer, we don't have a chance of any of that happening. So don't be so quick to clean up down there either, because that is really important for improving your soil quality and promoting the life of all of those organisms that make up the soil food web. And of course, the number one cleanup job each fall is cleaning up those leaves, getting them off our lawn and our landscape. But many times we're bagging them up and we're throwing them away, and they're literally going into the landfill. And that is such a waste, because I view all of those leaves each fall as Mother Nature's gift to gardeners because of all that they do for us and for the environment. So let's talk about that. Those leaves are loaded with organic material. They are organic material, but as the microorganisms that live in the soil are breaking those down, they're improving the soil and always making that better, and that's a huge thing, but it's also being converted to nutrients that the plants and the trees can take back up. So it's closing the loop in its full cycle and returning that back so we don't have to think about that. The other thing is that thick layer of leaves, if we just provide those to our landscape beds, that is such a good source for all of those overwintering creatures that depend on a safe place to live out the wintertime in a warm, cozy environment, and those leaves provide that. But when we're in such a rush to get them out of sight and off of our property, we deny that opportunity. And if we're trying to be good environmental stewards and have a better gardener and a healthy habitat, one of the primary ways that we can do that is to leave the leaves. So I encourage you to do that. Mother Nature has a great plan, and if we just adhere to that, it's less work on us, and it's a much better thing for the environment.